Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Happy Sabbath, everyone, is what we say traditionally here at the church. So if you're a visitor here and you're not part of the Adventist church, that's just our greeting to you, just to say, how would you explain that? And just it's a welcome that we do. Let's put it that way. It's a welcome. But we welcome each and every one of you. Thank you guys for being on time. We said we'd start at 10. We always try to give a few extra minutes for people to get here, things like that. But before we begin, we want to make an announcement. Brother Arturo.
Okay, thank you. Para los hermanos de habla hispana, le queremos anunciar que tenemos un servicio de traducción. Para ello, van a ocupar su diapositivo celular. Hay un código QR que está en la entrada que pueden tomar una foto. Al tomar la foto, lo va a llevar a un enlace de Zoom y en ese enlace de Zoom se va a estar realizando la traducción. Así que si ocupa ese servicio, también podemos hacer circular el código QR por las bancas para que puedan acceder a la traducción. Okay.
If you didn't understand that, that wasn't for you at all then. Okay, so the people who needed to get that, got that. Thank you so much. All right, so we're not going to start our first session just yet. We're going to have a bonus session for you real fast. For those of you that showed up early, a bonus session. I want to ask Dr. Ben and Dr. Hahn to come on up for a moment, please. We're going to have a little bit of an impromptu session for a few moments before we start. Thank you. So, people are here to hear you guys speak, but it's always better when we can know a little bit more about your personal journeys, how you got to this point in life. You know, you're just this person just standing up. And I had a really interesting conversation with Dr. Hahn, with Dr. Ben last night. Yeah. We were talking about, I forget the exact conversation, but this is what spurred this on. I was like, well, he said, how's it going with, I think, the weight loss? I was like, well, it's up and down, it's up and down. And he was saying, you know what? It's okay. Because even as a doctor, I have ups and downs too. And I'm like, really? Doctors have ups and downs? And that just spurred me to want to know more about, you know what? Probably everyone wants to know a little bit about their personal life. And so I'm just going to have a few questions. We're going to take about 10 to 12 minutes or so to just kind of, talk and get to know you guys a little bit, if that's okay, all right?
That's fine.
All right, so Dr. Hahn, at work, do they call you Dr. Hahn or do they call you something else?
There's many things they call me under their breath, but in public they do call me Dr. Hahn. I try to have my nurses call me Harvey. It's worked for maybe 2 nurses. There's some, I guess, appropriate level of respect, but I'm trying to get them to call me Harvey. Doesn't really work that well.
How about Dr. Harvey, maybe?
They do that too.
Okay,
that's fine.
Will do. And how about yourself? What do your patients call you or your coworkers?
Most of them call me Dr. Ben, but a lot of times, like Dr. Han mentioned, mostly I like them to call me Ben.
Just Ben?
Just Ben, because a lot of times when you have that kind of like personal things with them, it helps with bonding.
Very good.
And they feel much at ease, even opening up to you, so that at least sometimes the formality, I just tell them that the doctor is just a title.
Will do. All right, well, hey, you know what? I'm curious. Where did you study at?
Loma Linda University for medicine. I did my internal medicine training there. Then I went to University of Cincinnati for cardiology.
Okay. And how about yourself? Where did you study?
So same way, I also went to grad school at Loma Linda. And then prior to that, I had gone to the Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine, the UK. And then I also went to South Africa. In fact, when I started practice as in pediatric neurology. So I actually went to Johannesburg, South Africa, where I actually spent a year actually working with kids with neurological problems like autism, Bell's palsy, cerebral palsy, and all of that. So mostly that is where I started from.
Got you.
And then I went to the University of Ghana, actually.
So you went to a lot of schools here. Like you got Africa, South Africa, Loma Linda, Liverpool. That's a lot of school here.
And then at some point when COVID hit, I decided because I was seeing a lot of patients with chronic pain, so I also decided to study a year at Purdue University in pain neuroscience. So that's what I did.
Okay.
So some of us have been chronic students. That's what my friends call me.
All right, that's a lot of school. That's a lot of school. So at what point, Dr. Hahn, did you know medicine is what I want to do? I mean, did you know at a very young age, like were you cutting things up when you were 8 years old, dissecting things, you know? When did it dawn on you that, you know what, this doctor thing I think I'm going to stick with this?
Yeah, probably late high school, early college, and the biggest influence was really my friend group. I went to college, I met some really cool people, and they all wanted to become doctors. And that had a huge influence on me. And that really goes to speak about how important your tribe or your social group is and what the influence they can be. There's lots of studies that shows your BMI or weight is very similar to your friend group. Your habits are very similar to your friend group. And that's why I think church community is so important. If you have a group that's supportive, similar beliefs, it actually really reinforces and strengthens the whole social fabric you're a part of and makes your life better.
Oh, that's very, 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 that's a good point. Thank you. How about yourself? When did you know?
For me, it's kind of interesting because I grew from a typical Adventist home. My dad used to be in ministry for 45 years as
So
an
you thought you were
Adventist
gonna
leader.
be a pastor?
So for him, it was like no-brainer because none of the kids decided to go into ministry. So he thought I'm just his protege because I used to go to most of his mission and other things with him. In fact, I was the one who carries his Bible most times when we went to different places. So in his mind, he thought I was going to do that. So he wanted me to go to an Adventist university, but I had a different idea altogether. I wanted to go to public university because I grew up in the Adventist ecosystem, and I wanted to have a different experience because I felt like you find yourself in a bubble where you're going to be out there ministering into people. And I felt that going outside the Adventist domain helped me to experience life outside. So that if I have to reach out to people, I know what to do, how to act. Because it's easier for you to be around people who are like-minded. But when you leave that bubble, the world is big. The world goes beyond just the Adventist cycle. So for me, I always say that the only Adventist school I ever went to was Loma Linda. And all my life I've been in public schools, and that actually shaped my mindset with getting to know people's thinking outside what I already know. So that actually shaped what I became. So originally, I had no idea that this is where I was going. I just went to college in the University of Ghana. Those times you just start with biological sciences. So I was just doing that, and some way, somehow, they were like, you know that the biological sciences, that's where you're leading you to. I'm like, oh, really? That was not what I meant, but hey, if I'm here, why not go for it? So it was just sort of like divine providence, and I always tell my dad that, hey, we are serving in ministry, but in a different way altogether, instead of the pulpit.
Oh, very good, very good. Well, again, we're going to go a few more minutes. Hope you guys are okay.
Yes.
You good? You good? Okay, very good. So how has being in the medical field changed your life in regards to your relationship with Christ? That's a deep question, I know, but...
Yeah, you can go a million ways with that. I think one thing that's really, really important is there's something called the second mountain. David Brooks wrote a book, and the first mountain is your career, where you're making money, titles, everything. Then you come down to realize that's completely unfulfilling. The second mountain is when you find your purpose or meaning in life. And that typically, for most people, and for me, a lot of it has to do with spirituality or God. So at the first part of my career, I was publishing, doing tons of research, and that was my goal. The second part of my career is, that's not the impact I really want. The impact I want is to help people be totally healthy. And I personally do not, for myself or in general, do not feel you can be totally healthy or whole unless you have God. So putting spirituality in my medical practice has rejuvenated my practice, got me more excited, and I think it's really helped the interaction I have with patients and really brought a lot of meaning to my life. So I think it's a really important part.
Well, two things. So do you have your own practice, or do you work for the Kettering School of Health, or is it?
Well, I work for Kettering Health, which is an Adventist health institution, and that's nice because if I want to pray with patients or talk about spirituality, they don't try to shut that down. I could go across the street and make a lot more money at the competing system, but I like to stay here because of that whole environment that I'm in.
So you work for them, not necessarily your own practice.
It's my own practice, but yeah, they bought us out like 10 years ago. So
Gotcha.
technically, I'm an employee of Kettering.
So I have a side question. I heard something, I didn't read it myself. I heard something about a study that was done about patients that were ill. They had a higher percentage of getting well if they had people praying, coming to their room and praying for them or something like that. Is there a study that was done like, or did I make that up in my head?
You didn't make that up.
Okay,
The
gotcha.
one problem is there's multiple studies on intercessory prayer. The data is very mixed. So there are some studies where people that are prayed for and they had no idea people were praying for them, they actually got better. And there's other studies where there's been no difference. Now, the one thing that's totally consistent, though, is when they study people that do the praying, those people are positively impacted. So I may not be able to heal this guy in Kansas or heal this person in the ICU, but what the person that gets changed is me. So I totally advocate praying. And I'll be honest, sometimes it's hard because you see a patient and you go, this patient's going to die. I don't want to pray because the patient's going to die and the family's going to look at me like your God is powerless. But if you look at Revelation 21:4, which is the verse I share with people, there'll be, in heaven, no more tears, dying, death, or pain. When you can share that with people, there's something greater, there's a hope that we have beyond this earth, that's incredibly comforting. So even when it looks like there's no hope, there's still hope, and we have that hope.
Amen, thank you.
Amen.
Dr. Ben, same question for you. How has being in the medical field impacted your relationship with Christ?
For me, it has helped me to have a very humbling approach to life. And I learned this to be very content. In that I see people and we're having those conversations where this job has taken me to meet interesting people. People of power, sometimes former presidents and other things that the only place that I thought I could meet them was just to see them on TV. And now I'm having one-on-one discussions with them in their closet. I'm like, I cannot imagine like I'm actually sitting here having the discussion with these people. But it also tells that God also uses our talent and skills to reach people that we thought we could never reach. Mm-hmm. Because maybe without my medical field, I would never had the opportunity to meet these people and to share my experience and my faith. And most times when you connect with these people beyond the fact that you're seeing them as a patient, then you realize that they even open up to even the whole aspect of salvation. That wasn't the original goal for being there. But you realize that these people actually have needs beyond the health reasons why you are there. And that is where your faith in God comes in. And because it's always humbling when they realize that, oh, so this doc not only just studying just to become maybe a clinician, but they also have a relationship with God. And when you bring that aspect, it's like, it's a whole different experience. And I've had patients whereby we talk, and by the time I realize it's gone beyond actually having a whole sermon. And then they didn't ask for that, but it's like now we've opened up a whole Bible conversation. And just last week, we ended up just talking about forgiveness. And this patient and the family, and he opened it, and by the time I realized we were just talking about Ahithophel, who happens to be David's own advisor, and how his hatred for what David did to Bathsheba and the entire family, I'm like, and he was like, I didn't know that existed. And I'm like, yes. He actually went, he never forgave David for what he did to his family. And later on in the Bible, in Genesis 24, you read the whole story where he actually connived with Absalom to try to overthrow David just because of the unforgiveness. And he was like, damn. But I never went in there just to go talk about forgiveness and all of that, but that was the experience that actually brought that open. And
So those were not the answers that got you. Those were not the answers that I was looking for. Okay. I was thinking that you were going to say that something that like, man, the more we study, the more we find the Bible to be true, and that there actually is a creator, and that there is all this stuff going on. But I do appreciate those answers. Thank you guys for letting us get to know you a little bit more. I'm sure you're going to share a little bit more about your journeys as we continue throughout the day. But we are ready to start our first session, so I'll take that from you, sir. And I want to say the first session belongs to you, Dr. Ben.
Thank you so much.
And so we are looking forward to what it is that you are going to share with us today. So without further ado, actually, We didn't say a word of prayer today, so do you want to pray or do you want me to pray?
Oh, you can pray.
Okay, I'll pray, sure. Let's begin with a word of prayer. We thank you for another opportunity, dear Lord, to be here and to learn more about you. We know that this is not going to be a typical church service today, but we still pray that you would send your Holy Spirit to work in our hearts, illuminate our minds, so that we will understand the information that is being given to us. Thank you so much for loving us and caring for us. In your name we do pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, AJ. Just to address what you said last, I understood the word, we are fearfully and wonderfully made, the more I studied. Because if I look at the human body and the human frame, I understood that the entire creation of a human body is so incredible. And that is one of the reasons why we are here. And how many of us, is there anybody in finance over here? Finance. Okay. So you're going to help us in this presentation because I like to draw comparison between health and money. Because I know a lot of us really understand money. When it comes to money, if they say that if you even want to find corruption, follow the money, right? If you want to see how people are going to react, mess with their money and you're going to see how they're going to act, right? So now we're going to have that same discussion. But today, we are talking about recharge. And yesterday, Dr. Hannah did a great job, and Dr. Berger just gave us practical demonstrations of the importance of exercise. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about that. But today I just wanted to spend some time thinking about how we are going to recharge through movement and how we are going to balance exercise and recovery. Yesterday we were told that we need to exercise. Now, how do we recover after exercise? Why is it necessary to have recovery? And how do we strike the balance between exercise and recovery? In our world right now, sometimes it's the thinking is that anytime you work out or you rest, it's like you are being lazy. But my goal is that at the end of the day, you understand why at some point the recovery and rest is also an integral part of recharging, which happens to be the theme that we have here. How many of us will want to have a trust fund? You wish that you were born with a trust fund. Oh, so the rest of us, we don't want a trust, that you want it. How many of us? But how many of us believe that we have already been given a trust at the time that we were born? Do you believe that you have a trust? And what is that? Our body. I really want a response. I'm the kind that I always want to have an interaction with you. So the first trust that we were given is what? It's our body. And with that said, it means that you have a responsibility. If anybody gives you a trust, what do you do with it? At least for nothing at all, you are supposed to maintain the trust, right? So that the funds and everything in it keep on flowing so that you don't run out. Likewise, for instance, if God has given our body as a trust, it means that we have to do well to maintain that trust as long as we what? We live, and possibly entrust that, leave that same legacy for our what? For our children and our great-grandchildren, right? Imagine that your father left you a trust, and now by the time you are dying, everything is gone to the point where your kids don't have anything. How do they feel? Or how would they going to perceive you? They're going to say that you are irresponsible. So that is what we want to look at. So the entire exercise and other things that we talked last year and then we follow up today or this week, starting yesterday, was to let us know that the things that we're doing, the exercise and other things that we're talking about, they are our way of maintaining the trust that God has what? Given us. With that said, we've already talked about exercise, but I just want you to think about this. And I'm going to play this video and just use this few minutes. It's just a 1-minute video. And I want you to listen to attentively why all the things that we talked about starting yesterday and we're going to continue today is so important.
What will your last 10 years look like? Will you be quick enough for a game of tag with your grandchild? Strong enough to embrace every moment? Will you grow old with vitality? Or get old with disease? It's time to decide.
It's time to what? To decide. In fact, that is the summation of all the things that Dr. Han talked about yesterday, Dr. Butcher. The average American spends the last 10 to 15 years of their lives in a hospital. Isn't that sad? That you work for 45 to 50 years of your life only to live the remaining 10 years of your life sick. And in this instance, you have 2 ways to put on your tie to go to your grandchild's 16 years birthday party. Either you have this kind of tie, or you have what? The other tie. You saw that? Or do you want the feeding? Which one do you want? The tube one or the other one? And that is why, and this is what the Canadians did, and I loved it. When I saw it, I loved it. That it is time to what? To decide. Because all of us, and I started by asking the finance people, when do I start preparing for my retirement? The finance people, can you help me? When should I start preparing for my retirement? When? Now, right? In my working years, when I have the energy and I'm making the money, that's when I start making and preparing for retirement. I don't go starting retirement when I'm what? I'm 60 years, 70 years old. But even with that, you can still make changes. So the reason why we are here is that we want you to prepare for your retirement ages by making informed decisions what? Now. And that is why this whole weekend is so critical, that we can actually make these changes by the decisions we do now. We've already talked about the exercise, the physical and the mental health benefits of it. So I just want us to go further. If we look at exercise, the reason why I talked about we want to recover, but before we can recover, I want us to understand there are 4 basic exercises that we need to know of. We have what we call the flexibility exercises. We have the strength training, we have the aerobic exercises, and we have balance exercises. Yesterday, we learned the importance of having resistance training. A lot of time, most people know of the cardiovascular ones, we know the strength. But when it comes to the flexibility and then the balance training, most of us leave that what? Out. But in this country, 66% of the geriatric population actually have a fall after the age of 60. 66%. And out of them, only 30% of them survive after a fall. Only what? 30% of those who fall actually survive that. The question is what? Why? It's all because issues about balance and flexibility which they need when we get old is missing in part of our training for retirement. So if we're going to recover, I'll come back to this and I will let you understand why these 4 things need to come in. These 4 types of exercises. Now, let's understand the science. What goes into recovery? What is the science behind recovery when we say we need to recover? I just want us to understand something. The reason is that our body, normally we are made up of muscles, we are made out of tissues and other things. These tissues need to heal after they've undergone a particular activity, like an exercise. You use them, it's just like you spend your money. You make the money, you spend, and what do you go back to work to do? You make more, right? So you use it, you spend, and then you make more. What happens if you spend the money and you don't replace it? The accountant, demand and supply. If I make 100 and I spend 200, what do I become? You are in debt or you are broke. So similarly, the body also goes through that. If you use the body, and that is why initially I talk about trust. As a child, and I've had people tell me, oh, you know, when I was young, I could actually go down on my knees like this and come back. Now I can't do that again. And the question is, why? Because it's not because you are going old. It's because you stopped doing the things that made you be able to do what? This and come back what? Up. The reason I say that you are not old, because if you go to cultures that do these kind of things, what do? They are able to come back up. In cultures that do not involve doing that, you realize that the average American will have difficulty go down on the knee because our culture does not involve us doing this. We want higher toilet seats because it's going to hurt my knee if it's too low. Oh, the chair is too low. But the problem is not the chair that is too what? Low. Yesterday we said that, yes, diabetes runs in your family because nobody what? Run in the family. So the knee is hurting. The problem is not the chair being too low, because your knee is sad that you've not done anything in terms of the trust that you have it to maintain that was given to you when you were what? Young. So if you've abused the money in your knee to the extent that you put nothing in there, so you've used it to the point that the trust in your knee is now getting what? Empty. Am I making sense? So when you understand it that way, that is why when you use it, you need to recover. You need to produce something to recover that. And in the recovery, there are some physiological processes that actually happen. We have muscle repair, we have glycogen replenishment, we have hormonal adjustment that actually happens in the whole recovery process. For the sake of our time, I will not have time to go into the nitty-gritties of it, but at least we'll go through the technical aspect of some of these things because I want to use one example. And then the importance of this recovery is that it allows for athletic performance. Somebody will say, I'm not an athlete. But how many times have you run after your grandkid? Don't we do that all the time? No, don't touch that. And by the time you realize you are what? You are running off. The next thing you are reaching out onto the shelf to pick up something, and what do? Stretch. On a single what? Leg. And if you cannot maintain your balance on a single leg for more than 10 seconds, what is going to happen? You are falling, you are dropping the whole thing. So you see, some of these things, they are not abstract. They are very functional things that we do day in and day what? Day out. So we need that. So let me give you a typical example. And I just want to use our tendons. Every bone in your body have muscles attached to them. Mostly I use them as the framework. And for the muscles to be attached to the bone, you have tendons that actually attaches to them. And I just want to use this because this actually typifies why you need recovery. If you look at it on this screen, you have what we call a healthy tissue and a dysfunctional tissue. The healthy tissue, we have the L, which happens to be the load, and then the C, which happens to be the capacity. Anytime the load is lesser than the capacity, you are okay. Just like money. Anytime your expenditure is less than your income, How do you feel? You feel what? Great. You walk, you feel good about yourself. But how about if your expenses is greater than your income? Everything just annoys you. So similarly, anytime the load on your body, because of the activities that you do, so if you take tendons, for instance, the load exceeds the capacity, then you're going to have a very dysfunctional tissue. So, for instance, if you go, three main things that you need to look at. You need to look at the volume, the frequency, and then the duration. By that, what do I mean? The volume, ask yourself, how much activity was done in a specific day? And I'm coming back, this is why recovery is important. So look at the entire activities that you, how much activity was in a specific day. So assuming you wanted to exercise, how much, what was the volume? Frequency, how often was the activity done? And how long, in terms of the duration, was it done for? If you have these three components in any physical activity or any exercise that you want to engage in, that will inform the reason why you need recovery. And let me explain further. Let's take the volume. Now, when exercise volume is too much, then what happens is that you are going to do too much too soon after you've done too little for too long. Can I repeat that? When the volume is too much, then what is happening? You are doing too much too soon after you've done what? Too little for too long. Let me give an example. Because however, I'm just going to do what you did the last time. So I'm here. I have never done this. Okay? Then all of a sudden, I jump from there and then land on a single leg. I weigh an average of 150 pounds. Meaning when I jump from here to the ground, that is 150 pound weight when I what? Landed on this leg. On a single leg. If I do that 5 times or 10 times, let's do simple math. How much is it? I weigh 150 pounds. I did that 5 times 10. What is the math? Oh, the nets are here. Okay, let's 150 pound weight, and I landed on my single leg 10 times. So 10 times 150. How much pounds is that? 1,500, right? So that is 1,500 pounds of weight on this leg just by doing that 10 times. So when somebody tells me, oh, I didn't do much. I only jumped like this, just 10 times. I'm like, you said just 10 times? The fact that you are not the one actually doing it does not mean that it is not a lot. To the muscles here, that is 1,500 what? Pounds you landed on it repeatedly. So now you understand the reason between load and what? Capacity. So if my knee cannot take 1,500 pounds repeatedly within a short period of time, what do you think is going to happen? Injury. I'm going to get broke. Right? Do we get it? So sometimes we think that the activity that we're doing is very simple and that it shouldn't cause us to have problems the next day. And that is why training is so important, because the more you train, if I have trained this, then I can do that 10 times and I'm not going to have injury because I've built what? The capacity. I have generated enough income such that if I go to the dealership and I buy a Ferrari, I'm not going to go back home crying because I have enough worth in my trust. I think we are connecting on that. So that is the things that we need to have. The next thing is the frequency. So in terms of a frequency, it means that how many of them are you doing within a period of time? By the examples that I gave. We're also looking at what? Duration. how much time did I spend in doing that activity? But in all of this, if you put these three things together, they all come back to what? Rest. So within your frequency, the duration, and then the time that you spend, you need to have some time to recover from that. And that is why when you take, for instance, your tendons, which I decided to use that as an example. For instance, if you take a tendon, and like the way I landed on my leg, my muscles and then the tendons need to contract, actually absorb the load. If I do that repeatedly, according to this study, what happened is that within the first 24 hours, there's something we call collagen that need to be built up. Now, the collagen, what it does is the protein that allows synthesis of the tendons, the repair of the tendons. The interesting thing is that within the first 24 hours, you also have depletion of the collagen because you used it and you need to produce new ones. But the rate, if you look at the first 24 hours on this diagram, the rate of disruption is higher than the rate of regeneration. Because peak synthesis of this collagen that helps to rebuild these tendons, it takes at least 3 days. So within 24 hours, you have increased depletion. It is going to take about 48 hours for you to have a net gain. So between that time, you're going to have a period of weakness. So if, for instance, I don't have the capacity and I keep on landing on this leg repeatedly for, let's say, 10 times, and tomorrow I do the same thing, remember, I have not had enough time for my synthesis to regenerate. So it means that if I do that today, tomorrow my capacity is going to go down. My ability or my susceptibility of me to get an injury tomorrow is going to be higher. I think we connect on that. And that is why I talked about the initial exercise variability. So it means that if today I did jumping jacks where I'm actually jumping and landing on this like this, then tomorrow I can decide that I'm going to do this. So while this is recovering, I'm working on some body part. So for instance, today I did strength training, and maybe I did a leg day. Tomorrow, I'm not going to run again on that same leg that I did a leg day. Let me say tomorrow I'm doing stretching. I'm doing yoga, Pilates, normal stretching. Then it means that I'm taking some time off these ones for them to recover. I'm doing that. The next time I'm doing some balance, maybe my lower back stretches, one leg balance, and all of that. It's not the same stress where I'm actually loading this. So that is why having variability. So if I have these 4 different exercises, and even if I decide I'm going to work 5 days in a week, meaning I have something else to do every single day of the week. And with that, I will never get bored because I have that. So my tissues can recover. While this is recovering, I'm doing another different thing. So most times, these are the ways in which we can actually help with recovery. So how do we strike the balance? One, if you don't have balance, then what is going to happen is that you're going to have persistent fatigue. You're going to have decreased performance. Anytime you see these things, it means that you are overutilizing certain tissues. That is how you're going to know that you are overworking them. So how do I create a very effective working plan? If I want to have an effective working, one of them is already what I've already talked about. You have diverse exercises. So don't just do running as the only thing that you know, because I know some of us, they'll go like, I'm a runner. And for that is all they do. And then they leave strength training out. Yesterday we learned that you need resistance training, even for better metabolism is even much better with that. Technically, if you go into it, there are 2 ways in which our body generates energy. Mostly either through glycolysis by burning that glycogen or through fat oxidation. So with this, the most efficient part of it is the fat oxidation, which the body wants to use. But when you want quick energy, like if I want to run, I have to go through the glycolysis, which allows me to generate faster energy. So if I want to burn fat, running is not the one that is going to. Yesterday we learned that for you to even get to that level, you need to have done that over an hour for you to even get to the point where you start burning fat. But it means that you can burn fat, you can improve your cardiorespiratory endurance, you can use stretching to improve your range. So you know that you are an all-rounded what? Person. Because I've had people who are strong, but when you look at their legs, what do you see? And I know you've seen people like that. They call it the chicken legs. Yes, you see them all what? Puffy up here. But if you do this, what are they doing? They are all over the place. You want an all-rounded trust system. So that is one of the things. So incorporating low-intensity exercises that allow for blood flow, it allows you to get back your range and helps you to be back in shape. So what are some of the effective techniques for recovery? Some of them include, which I know we're going to talk about, our nutritionists are here, nutrition. It's so critical because you remember when I used the tendons as an example, we said one of the proteins is what? Collagen. It's a protein. So it means that you need nutrition to replenish the tissues that you've actually used. Last year I mentioned that there's something we call mechanotransduction, in that whenever you train, your body get that stress input, then it creates adaptation. It knows that, oh, this is where we're going. So let me recruit the necessary nutrients to rebuild my tissues so that I'll be able to do this activity. So it means that adequate nutrition is so critical. Eating the right meals will help you to recover even faster. So if you need magnesium for muscle relaxation, you don't have to go to the pharmacy to get it. Your pharmacy is the farm where you actually take the food from. Am I making sense? The farm is the farm, not the PH, but the FAR. That is where the actual medicine and nutrition is what? It's coming from. Hydration, taking in enough water. You hydrate the tissue, it'll help with the muscle repair, and that is how we recover our tissues. So if we don't want to get injury, a lot of time the reason, yes, things happen that is beyond our control. But most times the reason why people stop exercising is that they did one thing too much too soon. After they've done what? Too little for too long, they get an injury and they get what? Deflated. So mentally, it's like, oh, the last time I did this, I actually hurt myself. I don't want. Sleep. I know one of our colleagues here is going to talk about that. It helps you. You need to reset after all the activities you've done in a day. Most time, the exercise is not the only activity you did in a day. You did so many things. Your body needs to reset. So sleep is also very important for recovery. I've already talked about the stretches. Now, the last thing is what? The role of technology. Now, the good thing is that how do I monitor most of these things? We have now the wearables. Sometimes I tell people they are not just for fun, or they are not just to show your affluence, that you can actually afford them. They are for a reason. So why don't you use it to monitor your heart rate, monitor your sleep pattern, so that you know that you are sleeping better. If it is telling you are not, you're able to know that, hey, I need to work hard. So that is how these wearable technologies will help us to know that, hey, is my heart working too much? Do I need to go see Dr. Boja so that we start looking at the blood pressure and start having real life experience where next time I can come here and say that, oh, my blood pressure my watch used to tell me that this is my blood pressure or my blood sugar was this. But now I went to see the expert and this is the level that I'm in right now. So so we have all these tools that actually help out. So with all that I have said, I just want you to have this in mind. Most of these things that we talk about start with certain small decisions. And that is what, if you don't know the power of those small decisions, including the decision to be here this weekend, I just want you to look at this video.
I will carefully place it. And there are 13 dominoes. The largest domino, it weighs about 100 pounds and is more than a meter tall. Ready?
So a lot of us, we want to knock out the big what? Dominoes. But for us to do that, we need to start with what? The small ones. So if you think that the small changes that you need to make now is not making any effect, remember, when I came here, if I made a step like this, and every hour I make a step, and it took me 24 hours to get to where Dr. Prince is, and somebody said that all it took you is just a step in an hour, and they decided that they are going to be standing here, in 24 hours, where would they be? Right here, right? But for me, who was taking just one step, in 24 hours, where would I be? There. The money people tells you the power of compound effect. When it comes to health too, there's the power of what? Compound effect. Small changes done consistently over time knocks out the big dominoes that are facing us. Thank you so much.
All right, they're going to put up a QR code, or we can put up the QR code. Any questions you guys have, anything that you want to ask, it would probably be a good thing to ask through here. It'll take you to a little page, and you can ask questions. Some questions are already being answered. They will either be answered in the panel, or the response will be posted. So if you have any specific questions to all the different topics that come up. Now, what's interesting from the current conversation we just heard to what's coming, I've been working in the ER for 14 years, and I've had a patient that it literally fits into the current conversation and what we're going to next. Gentleman was 49 years old, and he fractured his femur, big bone. Now you would say, what was he doing? He was probably jumping, he probably fell from somewhere. If I would tell you the story, you would be like, how? He slipped on a grape and he fractured his femur. Slipped on a grape. And he had all the positive symptoms of a person that would happen to. Big gut, probably didn't move a lot, probably could, I'm pretty sure if he went like this, he probably wouldn't be able to do. And I could guarantee you, with what's going next, probably doesn't go outside a lot. He doesn't walk, he just doesn't go. I've heard this term a lot, and I wish we could take it more serious. Go touch grass. Literally, he probably does not touch grass. Many of us probably haven't touched grass with our feet in years because we don't know, hey, I need to just go outside and walk. So as we continue on these topics, use the QR code. What are some questions that you have that you're just curious about? Simple things, like he was mentioning. How many times do we stretch? And I could guarantee you many of us would be like, I never thought of it like that. And the conversations that we're going to go here next. The summer weather is coming, and many of us are scared of sweat. Something about sweat in San Antonio that we just don't like. We just don't like sweat. I love going outside. I'm going to get a little tanner. You're going to see me in a few months. I love going outside. I like getting really dark. Now, of course, there's other things that I have to do to protect myself, right? But I'm going to have the next speaker come up here. We'll just do some quick impromptu, get the audience comfortable with the speaker. Now, I have here Mr. Lesford Duncan. And we want to get you comfortable because the doctor said, what do you like to be referred to as? And they said their first names. Of course, I work with a lot of physicians, and yes, I still don't call them by their first name. There's something, I don't know, my dad is a doctor, I call him by his first name, but there's something about a nurse calling a doctor by their first name, but it does create this personal relationship. Now, I want to get to know you a little bit more so the audience can feel comfortable as you're telling them whatever is information you have. What are some things that you do, connecting it to your topic? I saw some of your background with what you do, and I think you're from Colorado, right?
Well, our organization is based in
Colorado. Now, I've been there, and it's not San Antonio. It's not a place where you can just go and so beautiful over there. But what are some things that you do specifically with your topic, with recreation and the role of recharging? What are some of the things that you do in your personal time?
Absolutely. Well, first off, want to say good morning to the incredible Scenic Hills Seventh-day Adventist Church and the amazing team that has brought this event together to really focus in on a critical and essential topic to not only me but to all of us. We're here. And a tremendous thank you to Dr. Prince Ochere, his wife, who we went to Loma Linda University together, the stewards who helped to facilitate me coming here from Georgia, from Marietta, Georgia, to be with you today. Incredibly grateful to be with you. What do I like to do in my spare time, or how do I thrive outside, as we'll talk a little bit about in the presentation? I love getting out on the water. How many of you like kayaking or have ever kayaked before? I see a few. Kayaking is absolutely my way of recharging, of connecting with nature. It's an opportunity for a relatively low intensity workout, unless you're one of those whitewater kayakers that are flying down the Ocoee River. Most kayaking is flat water lake kayaking, and I in particular love kayaking in swamps alongside the alligators of the Southeast.
All right. Now, with the topic, we asked the other speakers, what is it growing up that got you into this type of lifestyle, now made it a career? What is it that got you into this? Was there something in your growing up that just said, this is it, this is what I'm going to do when I get older?
Yeah, I never would have, little Lesford 30 years ago would have never thought that I could have made a career out of this, right? I always enjoyed the outdoors. I remember from the age of 8 riding my bicycle from my house on Long Island, New York, all the way out to the beach by myself, mind you. I think it was a different time now. We're a little bit more cautious with our kids. I remember getting out camping with my family and with our Pathfinders group in church. And so those were some of my early experiences, but it wasn't until adulthood that, started climbing big mountains, and happy to share a bit more of that. Climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, have been on Everest and other mountains around the world, and started seeing the vast beauty of nature. Both nearby and near to home, which is really essential, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, as well as far off nature in some of our grand national parks and incredible landscapes around the world.
All right, last question, and going back with that video, if you to say the most simplest thing to just say, I don't go outside at all. There's something about going outside that I just don't like. But what would be the thing that you say, if you start going outside for a walk, for this, this will be the impact to your health, mental health, to just, what would be the thing that say, if I tell you this, I could guarantee you'll start going outside?
Yeah, I would actually start with, the number one impact in my mind from and we've heard a lot from some phenomenal presenters, both yesterday and today, about a lot of the physical benefits, but I would center in on the mental health and the well-being component of it. How you feel so much better after and there's research behind this, a 20-minute walk in your local park helps to improve a whole host of outcomes, but it makes you feel better, right? It's the right way to start off the day. I encourage folks, even in working environments, many of us work in fairly sedentary environments where we're behind desks. It's ironic that as the executive director of the Outdoor Foundation, much of my work is indoors. But I encourage folks, wherever possible, take a walking meeting, right? Encourage your colleagues, hey, could we go down to the park down the street and chat about this topic there instead? It makes you feel better. It promotes it promotes cognition. It promotes social connectedness. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that in the presentation as well.
Well, thank you for answering those questions. And once again, welcome, Mr. Lesford Duncan.
Thank you.
Okay. So I'm back again. You guys are so excited to hear him, right? But we were just whetting your appetite for a moment, introducing you, because we're going to take a short break, about 5 to 7 minutes. But we wanted to introduce you guys to him so that you can be aware of what's coming next. So we're going to give you a time to get up for a moment, stretch, use the restroom, get some water, do all that stuff. And when you get back, then you're going to hear about Brother Duncan here. Thank you so much. All right, so take a 5-minute, 10-minute break or so, okay? We'll call you back when we're ready.
All right. Welcome back from that little short break. We'll go ahead and get started. Once again, we'll welcome Mr. Lesford Duncan as he has our next presentation. And again, the QR code, quickly if you want to get it. Any questions you guys have?
Excellent. Thank you so much. Good morning again. Good morning again. Oh, I'm very much, I grew up in a church that was very much call and response, and so I love the feedback also, just to make sure that I'm staying on mark also throughout my presentation and really meeting the needs of what folks are looking for out of this amazing conference. Again, thank you to the Scenic Hills SDA Church for this incredible opportunity. My name is Lesford. I go by Les as well, Duncan. I heard someone call me Dr. Duncan earlier. Not a doctor, but I'm fortunate to lead an organization called the Outdoor Foundation, the philanthropic arm of the outdoor industry and many of the brands that you might be familiar with. But our foundation's purpose is really rooted in increasing and expanding outdoor access and access to outdoor participation. So just to kick off today, what I'd like to do is a brief exercise, if I can invite everyone in the room to close your eyes with me for just a moment. If I can invite everyone to close their eyes. I'd like you to think back to one of your either earliest or most memorable experiences in the outdoors. I'll give you a few seconds to kind of bring that image to the forefront of your mind. Where were you? What did you see around you? What did you experience? What did you smell? What did you hear? Maybe even what did you taste if you were having a picnic or breaking bread with family in those moments as well. I want you to sit in that moment, whether it be by that beautiful creek or by that lake or in that favorite park or on a big mountain. What was it about that moment, and just reflecting to yourself, that was so important? If you would, please open your eyes. I'm sorry to have to rush to bring you back from that moment. But for me, some of those moments, as I was sharing before, were moments spent with family in parks, at big family reunions, or at our big camps during Pathfinders. Those moments were so essential to me. They were so formative in who I became as a leader. They were essential to my health and to my well-being. They helped me to get through some difficult points in time in my life as a child as well. And those experiences really carried with me into adulthood and into the outdoor enthusiast that I am today. And yet, many of those outdoor experiences that we envisioned in this moment aren't accessible to everyone, right? And so imagine, right? Imagine you have a cure for cancer or a cure for AIDS or a cure for heart disease that is there, it's developed, it's accessible, and yet there are millions of people that don't have access to it. If you could imagine with me, outdoor participation is one of those cures, one of those preventative measures that really improves all aspects of our lives. And so that's really what the work of the Outdoor Foundation is focused on. Now, you'll hear a lot throughout this weekend about the importance of recreation as a whole, right? The importance of moving your body, the importance of running, of physical activity, right? Making that a daily practice. And outdoor recreation falls under that, but there's some additional benefits to outdoor recreation that I'll share as well. So why does nature matter, right, in this equation? It helps to boost mental health and reduce depression. It enhances physical health and fitness. It strengthens our social connection and our cohesion. It improves our cognitive functions. And so I'll talk about a few of my favorite outdoor activities, and specifically how each of those unique activities also improve outcomes for a more whole and more full life. Starting with walking, we talked a little bit about this, so I won't spend as much time. Some of this is intuitive. For example, walking boosts your heart health. But it also decreases depression and anxiety. And there was a recent study out of the UK, fairly recent. It's a little more dated, and there's been more studies that have confirmed this. A 20-minute walk in the park decreases depression and anxiety so much so that it almost has the equivalent effect of an antidepressant in improving depression and improving anxiety. Walking also improves cognitive performance as well. How many of you walk in the morning, say before work or before starting the day, right? Don't you feel that much better and feel that much more sharp and crisp throughout the day, right? And the more frequently you do that, the more it improves those outcomes. Forest bathing is also a concept. So much of what you'll hear throughout this weekend is the importance of movement in improving outcomes. But forest bathing, or as it's called in Japanese culture, shinrin-yoku, is just purely being in the presence of greenery, right? So even if you don't have the opportunity to move, or in addition to the opportunities that you're taking to move, just being in the presence of trees, being in the presence of creeks, touching grass, sitting on grass, right, really also has many of these same benefits as well. Reducing cortisol, so decreasing stress, and that's particularly important and something I like to talk about. I come from a background working in health and human services, in particular working with children, youth, and families who've experienced trauma and adversity in their life. And so this is really an essential point, right? So studies show from that body of work that at least 1 in every 4 of us have experienced a significant life trauma, right? And while I first and foremost recommend and am a huge proponent of therapy in really helping us to address and unpack trauma, things like outdoor recreation also helps to improve as well. Forest bathing also strengthens immune systems. It enhances relaxation and recovery. Another activity that I really love is birding. How many of you bird or consider yourself birders? Awesome. My girlfriend got me into birding about 3 years ago, buying me my first pair of binoculars. And I didn't realize the benefits, right? I'm like, I'm not a bird geek. Like, they're birds that look cool. But the exercise of birding is actually really intentional, right? So it activates certain senses that that are not regularly activated, or that we're not as in tune with. And so birding actually requires a very intentional amount of listening, right, for specific calls of birds. It requires you to be focused and engages your vision, especially if you're looking for one of those really small songbirds as well. And so it increases our focus, it increases our attention, and it improves our outcomes. It promotes mindfulness as well. It also lowers depression and stress and builds patience and mental clarity. And then kayaking. My favorite outdoor activity is kayaking. I call it healing through rhythm. The repetitive motion, and so this is true for any activity that requires repetitive motion, whether it be hiking, kayaking, biking, anything that requires repetitive motion improves our emotional regulation as well. So you think about kayaking, it's a full body engagement. It's not just our arms. If you're kayaking with just your arms, you're not doing it right. It's a full body motion. And that helps to soothe us. So often when I have a stressful day after work, I'll take my boat out to the creek nearby my house and paddle there. And again, it also enhances upper body strength and resilience and supports cardiovascular health. So I'll share a little bit about the Outdoor Foundation as well, just kind of talk briefly about what we do to promote outdoor access. As I mentioned, we're the philanthropic arm of the outdoor industry. Many of the brands that you're most familiar with support us to support communities. And so we do two main things at the Outdoor Foundation. We make direct community investments or multi-year grants to community-based organizations and, most importantly, networks of within communities to address some of the barriers that exist to outdoor access, whether it be transportation or the need for more investment in youth programs, or funding to support innovative partnerships with schools and school districts and healthcare centers. So we do those community investments through what we call the Thrive Outside initiative, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. We also lead the industries, and it's not only relevant to the industry, but available and accessible to the general public, the Outdoor Participation Trends Report, a report that we've been conducting over the past 17, now 18 years, really outlining who's doing what, where, when, and how in the outdoors, and tracking trends tracking trends over time. So I'll share some of the data from that. In our 2023, or in our report on 2023, which we published in 2024, the outdoor recreation participant base grew by 4.1% to 57.3% of all Americans over the age of 6 are getting outdoors. This is huge. We're really excited about it. We're excited about what it means for community health and well-being. As you can imagine, much of that spike happened during the pandemic, so connected to a lot of what I shared about the benefits, the mental health benefits of being in the outdoors, really showed up, right? People were cooped up inside, socially isolated, and folks needed the outdoors more than ever. And so we saw a huge uptick in people recreating in the outdoors to improve their health, their overall physical and mental health. So we saw growth in outdoor participation. What we also saw was growth in diversity in outdoor recreation, which is also really important to us. As we talk about some of the barriers to accessing outdoor recreation, we talk about kind of two things, both physical and functional barriers that exist to outdoor recreation. So as we become an increasingly more urbanized society, right? More people are living in cities and urban centers than ever before. That disconnect from nature has become more real, right? We as humans naturally want to be in touch and in tune with nature. That was how we were created by God to really be in harmony with and to steward nature. But urbanization has separated us from that over time. And so the fact that there's been this huge push and movement to increase diversity in the outdoors, where especially communities of color have felt separated, both because of proximity to nature, as well as feelings of safety in certain spaces in nature. Outdoor recreation also costs money, and so that's a barrier for many people to buy equipment, to buy the gear needed to be able to recreate in the outdoors as well. In terms of diversity in the outdoors, also what we saw in last year's report was that more women than ever before are recreating. I believe it was 51.7% of women. So for the first time in our recorded history, more than half of women are getting outdoors and recreating regularly in the outdoors. And more people over the age of 65 are recreating than we've ever seen before. And we have an entire slide deck. I won't bore you with all of the data, but wanted to highlight some of the ways that we're seeing outdoor recreation change and grow. One of our concerns, though, is this. While we've seen an increase in outdoor recreation, more people getting into the outdoors, we've seen a steady decline in youth frequency in getting outdoors. And so this is something that should cause alarm, but that shouldn't be surprising, right? We've seen that trade-off of green time for screen time, With the advent of social media and smartphones, we see more kids, more children connected to phones and devices, and sometimes multiple devices at the same time. I, as an adult, caught myself doing it. I'm on my phone and on my laptop with my TV playing in the background. And there's some statistics and estimates that say that kids are spending between 7 to 13 hours per day in front of a screen, right? And so we've seen that corresponding decrease in the frequency of kids getting into the outdoors. We know that when we connect to nature, people and the planet thrive, and yet 28 million youth lack accessibility to nature close to their home, so ideally within a 5 to 10 minute walk from their home. Nearly 10% of the population lack that accessibility. Over 80% of children don't get outdoors at least once per week, which is scary, right? For many of us, we think back to our childhood. You were pushed outdoors and you didn't come back in until the lights came on, and usually it was someone calling to you. It's a completely different culture shift. And 7 minutes is the average amount of time, outdoor time, that children get daily. 7 minutes. And so through our Thrive Outside initiative, what we've seen through investments in now 13 communities across the country, expanding to 15 communities this year, we've seen a steady increase. So community partners working together to expand recreational opportunities, YMCAs, local community-based organizations working together to expand some of those opportunities for kids. And as I mentioned, and this slide is really important, some of those historic and current barriers that exist for especially communities of color to access outdoor recreational opportunities. It's really important that 79% of the kids who have been engaged through our program are Black, Indigenous, and people of color. So I mentioned we're currently in 13 communities across the country, from Seattle to Atlanta and everywhere in between, engaging children, youth, and families. Something I'll note here also is, our work is more than just taking a kid out fishing for the first time or, teaching them how to ride a bike one time. The programs across our Thrive Outside network are really focused on repeat and reinforcing opportunities for youth to connect deeply to outdoor recreation. And so these are some of the partners that make up our Thrive Outside communities, from community-based organizations, local businesses, outdoor recreation programs, schools and school districts, government agencies, funders, healthcare, and many other partners that all recognize the benefits of outdoor recreation. And so I love sharing this picture. So this is a picture of Alexis. So prior to this role, I worked deeply in programs connecting children to youth directly. And Alexis, I remember when she first came to our program, she was in high school, and she had applied to be a part of our leadership program. She was very shy, very quiet, very nervous, but very diligent. And I remember, as we were teaching rock climbing and how to tie knots and different activities, she was very focused and very, very much engaged, but always shared that she was a little too shy to be up in front of people. Well, this is a fast forward picture that my colleagues that work at Outdoor Outreach, this is a nonprofit based in San Diego, had shared, is that she's an instructor now, helping to not only connect other youth to the outdoors, but other youth within the community that she came from, which is also incredibly important. And so Alexis says, this program has instilled in me a confidence that I did not think I possessed, and a love for the outdoors that has shaped my life, my view of the world, and the wonders it possesses. So not only do these programs help to build confidence, help to promote all of the physical and health benefits, but it also cultivates the next generation of environmental champions that are then also advocating for those spaces as well. And so I'll end on this note, just recognizing the importance of outdoor recreation. Kind of a call to action to each of you is on an individual level, right? Thinking about some of the outdoor activities that you might want to engage in, or begin to make a habit or a lifestyle. Again, you don't have to summit the world's tallest mountains in order to get outdoors. The outdoors could be as close as your nearby park. I encourage you also to considering mentoring others, right? So bringing family out into the outdoors as you're thinking about that next family reunion, for example. What elements of outdoor recreation could you introduce to family in those spaces as well? And then I would also consider connecting with local community-based organizations that are doing this work and volunteering or donating as your finances permit. And there's an incredible program actually based here in San Antonio that if any of you are interested or looking for places to volunteer, they're always looking for volunteers of all backgrounds. But the organization is called Black Outside. Alex Bailey, a good friend of mine, is the executive director, and they are doing some phenomenal work connecting especially Black youth, or reconnecting Black youth to the outdoors in ways that are powerful and transformative, whether it's connecting with youth through schools or connecting with youth who have parents or families that have been impacted by incarceration. They also facilitate Camp Founder Girl, which is a phenomenal program that is actually the oldest summer camp for Black girls in the country. It's been around for over 100 years. It was developed during a time when young Black girls could not be a part of other summer camps, and so created a really important space, and today has expanded to serving hundreds of young Black girls across the country that come into Texas. So if you're not familiar with them, check out Black Outside. I definitely wanted to give that plug to a phenomenal organization doing some really incredible work. I'll pause there. I believe we'll do another break and then come back for a panel discussion. Thank you all.
Yes, we are going to take another break, but right before we do, we just want to remind you again about the QR code, that if you have questions, we will be doing a panel discussion this morning. Actually, that's next, based on questions that we've received yesterday and today, and then questions that we're receiving now will be for, and the other sessions will be for the panel discussion this afternoon. So time is 11:41. We're going to take about a 5-minute break and get up, stretch, move around. The restrooms, in case you're wondering, are right outside these doors right here. There's another set, actually, if you go into the lobby and turn to the right as well. So let's take a 5-minute break, and we will be back in a moment. Welcome back, everyone. Don't know if you got up to move or to stretch at all or to use the restroom, but that's our little break that we're going to have. So at this time, this is our time for our panel discussion. So I'd like to go ahead and invite our 4 doctors here to come on up to the stage. We have questions for them. So Dr. Hahn, Dr. Ben, Dr. Lesford, and Dr. Boja. You can come on up. I don't see Dr. Boja. He's around someplace. I know he's here. We'll go ahead and start without him. Any seat, gentlemen, any seat you like. All right, Dr. Boja will be coming. Let me grab that. Actually, I said any seat. I lied. This middle seat's for me. Okay. It was an inadvertent lie, though. Inadvertently. Now, I will say, gentlemen, that we are, when Dr. Boja gets here, we are very racially diverse up here. However, there's no women on the stage this time. So we need to fix that for next year, maybe, right? Yeah, maybe. So, all right, Dr. Boja, come on up. Yes, we were waiting for you. We weren't going to start without you. All right, so, all right, guys, have you seen these questions previously?
No.
No, good.
I don't think so, yeah.
Good, because I want it to be a surprise, all right? So let's just start. I don't know. You guys can just jump in because you have different specialties, things like that. First question says, can a patient with obesity and ESRD go back to CKD stage and get better? In addition, for PT who has for patient, I think that says, who has a low EF or CABG, can they be able to get better and leave prescribed meds? I don't know if I read that question right, that first one. I don't know if you guys, did you guys get that?
That's a multi-battle. I mean, you had too many questions in one
Okay,
question.
can we just pause for
That
just 1
tells you
second?
how
Just one-
loaded
one-
they
one
are.
moment. Can you just explain what ESRD actually is first, and then what CKD, because we're not medical people up here, so
Dr.
we just
Henry can
wanna-
jump in as well. So,
Yes.
they're talking about heart issue and then the kidney issue. So ESRD should, represent end-stage renal disease. In other words, the questioner is concerned about complete kidney failure. Unfortunately, that's the kind of terminal stage where you're actually waiting for the dialysis. And the question embedded in that was, can I go back to CKD, chronic kidney disease, meaning a little bit earlier stage? So that was the question. I guess the real question is, can I reverse my renal failure? So that's the simplest form of the question. I'm not sure if you can promise that, because people who are on the CKD, chronic kidney disease, stage 1, 2, 3, before you get into the end stage, they do see a lot of improvement. Once you're called end-stage renal disease, it could be difficult. I wouldn't say impossible, but I don't expect any huge miracles. But one thing I can tell you for sure, I think Dr. Henry, you can jump in, for heart failure, even diabetics for 20, 30 years, or somebody on type 1 diabetes, ended up on insulin. Can I get better? There is always an opportunity. We look at one lab value, one organ function at a time, but the human body is very complex. So there's a lot of, positive effects you see. One of the examples we can say is I was diagnosed with a cancer. I'm on chemo, radiation, and surgery and all that. Does it help? Lifestyle change can help, yes. Your response rate to the chemo would be better. I think your remission, your recurrence would be down. And the same is true for the kidney failure as well. Probably they don't need to struggle on your dialysis sessions. And you actually live longer and much healthier on dialysis, even if you end up on dialysis. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, to talk more about the EF is what we call ejection fraction. That's a measure of how well your heart pumps. The bigger the number, the better. CABG, or what we shortly call mesenchymal cabbage, means coronary artery bypass grafting, which is an open heart surgery to bypass blocked up arteries. You have to think of 3 stages. There's something that we call injury. That's where something's hurt, obviously. Actually, exercise is a form of injury. Then you recover and you get stronger from it. Now, there's something we call damage, where that injury has now led to a permanent amount of dysfunction. And in that, there's what we call reversible and irreversible damage. Now, with lifestyle medicine and regular pharmacologic medicine, there is some things that are reversible. We can make the ejection fraction, like you suppose you have a big heart attack, EF went from normal 55% down to 20%. with lifestyle, meds, and stuff, we can get that back to normal often. But sometimes we can't. And this is why prevention is so important. You can have an irreversible event, and no matter what we do, we're not going to be able to make you recover or fix that. Now, what Dr. Boja said is really important is even stroke. You can actually kill off part of your brain, and your brain's incredible. It can reroute some of the function, and you can have basically recovery, functional recovery, that's really outside the anatomy of what's been damaged. So not everything is totally cut and dried, but there are things that you can't come back from, and that's why prevention is so important.
See, I think actually, did you have something to add to that at all, by the way? Okay, I don't even know how much time we actually have. We'll take as much time as we want. All right, so I was thinking to myself, maybe David should have been the one doing this, because David has a medical background, and I was stumbling over these. I don't know what I'm talking about right now. But I represent the normal, the regular non-doctor people here, so yes, that's why I'm here. All right. All right, so to any presenter, especially, it says Dr. Khan, could you speak more about the impact of trauma, especially childhood trauma, on health and fitness?
AJ, you're looking at me for some reason, so I'm just going to go for it.
Yeah, go right ahead.
This has actually been really well studied. There's something called ACE, Adverse Childhood Events, and that tracks very well with having chronic disease and early death later in life. And we're talking about things like, as a kid, your family went through divorce, you were beaten, you saw violence in your life. The more of these you start stacking up, it's amazing. The higher your ACE score, the much more likely you have emphysema, heart disease, diabetes, stroke, and death. And that's well described. And the short term, what we call it, is we call that trauma. And we can all kind of relate to this. We've all had trauma in our lives that has physiologically, emotionally, socially hurt us. And until that's resolved, and sometimes that can't be resolved, that is going to be an impediment to your whole holistic health. So I think the trauma is really important. I'm going to make one more comment. It's not really political. It kind of is, but there is something called weathering. And that's when people are under chronic stress. That term is typically used for people that have been facing racism for their whole life. You can't live in a high-stress environment for a long period of time without getting sick and being unhealthy. So efforts to break down the income gap, to be more diverse, to recognize that some people, like me, have some advantages. I hate the word privilege, but people are born with some advantages. To understand that those differences make a huge impact on how easy your life is. To say that's not important, I think really only comes from a person whose life has been really, really easy, and it's easy for those people to say that. Everyone else needs to really be aware that these things have a huge impact on our overall health.
Yeah, if I could add to that, and spot on, and it's unfortunate that the conversation around equity, health equity, and the the disproportionate impacts on different populations has become politicized, right? There's well-founded bipartisan research around that. Just to add on to the ACE study, though, and I used to work in Health and Human Services as a child abuse prevention coordinator and cultural competency officer for a county department of behavioral health. And we saw it time and time again, right? Kids that experienced adversity early on in life had fared worse in all health and social outcomes in ways that, in significant ways. One of the things that got me interested in this line of work in outdoor recreation was after taking a group of kids that were in the foster care system. I was volunteering with an organization. We took a group of kids out hiking, and just seeing the feeling of awe on their faces, seeing the feeling of or seeing them experience competency and the ability to do that much more. What we saw were the elements of what we call resilience. So we talk about ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, and how that is unfortunately a predictor for many health outcomes. But then there's this entire body of research around resilience and how resilience can be fostered through feelings of self-efficacy and self-competence, right? So that's built through outdoor recreation, through team sports, and other recreational opportunities. We see that also developed through community and through mentorship as well. And so all of that is interconnected, right? So for any of us to think about, if any of you are on a journey for improving your lifestyle, improving your health, tackling that journey without thinking about and also addressing the impact of trauma as it may present in your life would not be holistic. I'll give one more example. So Dr. Vincent Folletti and Dr. Robert Onda were the two researchers that really led the Adverse Childhood Experiences study. Dr. Vincent Folletti, what brought him into this body of work was he was actually a physician focused on obesity, and he was running a clinic for people who were clinically obese. And what he saw was, as they were going through as they were going through his programming, they would lose a tremendous amount of weight and would be doing really well, and then that weight would come right back. And they were wondering, well, why does it come back? And why does it come back for some patients but not others? And that was where he began asking questions about, have you experienced violence in your lifetime? What was your home life like? And started seeing a correlation that then he quantified through the Adverse Childhood Experiences study, which has been replicated many times over and now includes questions about racial trauma as well and the impact there.
I think I wanted to look at it, look at one aspect even with pain. In one of the studies, they actually realized that for those who have actually have that ACE, early part, they actually increase nerve sensitivity at the early part. So mostly because they were exposed, their nerves become like heightened. So every traumatic experience that they have as they age add up. So by the time they get to adulthood, their innervations have become so sensitive that anything just triggers it. So people who have even have like fibromyalgia, they've had complex regional pain syndromes and all of that, you go further and realize that all of that was because of some of these ACE experiences that they actually have made their nerves so much sensitive. So what they are experiencing now is just the last drop that is making everything overflow. So that is why some of these things need to be addressed, like even with our kids and our young people, as much as possible, if we can actually reduce some of this trauma, it increases or decreases the sensitivity of their nervous system to some of the experiences that they are going to have later on in life.
Can I jump in on this? What Ben and what Les is talking about, this cup example, everyone's got resilience. They have some capacity to handle stress. When you have a ton of stress already, any little thing is going to break your back. And then that just makes the whole house crumble. And then we look at them like, what's their problem? We have to be a little bit more gracious and understand people have gone through a lot. And what we're seeing, maybe a little thing, but they just cannot tolerate anymore that day.
Yeah, if I can add something, I can't agree enough with those comments and actually insights, but if I can add my 2 cents as a clinician, your health is not just hiding in your labs or images. That's exactly what shows up on your medical records. There's a whole, because humans are social beings. The human physiology is more complex than what you can see, find on your labs and your imaging system. We have incredible imaging technology, but you can't find answers for those and solutions on those numbers. So taking that holistic approach, the flip side is, if you fix that, just like I was emphasizing yesterday, if you actually fix the lifestyle, you probably don't need all this chaos. But if you miss that, you don't find the solution elsewhere. So you cannot forget the old trauma or past trauma or the current trauma or the stress, because that's an invisible enemy within.
In the clinic, some of the funny things that we give analogy is that those images, like you mentioned, is that it's just like going to a restaurant. You have the nice menu and everything and how the pictures of the food, but there's one important component that the menu and all the pictures don't tell you is the taste of the food. You can never predict the taste of the food just by looking at the menu or even looking at the picture and how nice it looks. So it's the same thing. A lot of times, some of these experiences that people do have, it is when you have that experience, the lifetime experience, that you can actually predict what exactly is going on. But sometimes just looking at the images of their MRI report and CT scan report sometimes do not give you a more holistic picture of what they are dealing with.
Thank you, guys. I was going to take that discussion to a totally different place. No, but a serious one, though, about how I was just thinking about the impact of everything that you guys said, about the impact that, I'll just say, like the spiritual component then can have on that when you're looking at things like you've had trauma, but how important now forgiveness is in order to heal from those things, and how important now what we when you come to church and you say people can't take anything else, how we can show them grace because we don't really know what they've been through for that particular week. And so I was just thinking about all those things, how they can kind of blend into the spiritual realm and aspect.
If you have a second, actually, if you think of spirituality, the place we are here, there is a bonding, connecting force, right? Spirituality is not just a feel-good sensation. If you connect it to the modern medicine, what it affects, our influences, is actually our core immune system. All these drugs, these modern drugs, especially immunology, these chemotherapy and immunotherapies, and the diseases and the cancers, they're directly linked to your immune system and your bone marrow, how your body is responding to them. And that's where actually our spirituality hits, and that's why people who are actually more spiritual are actually following a certain belief system respond well to the treatment. Sometimes they don't even need the treatment. So I think you see these magic miracles happening. In the majority, I think that there is a spirituality directly affecting our human hormonal system, endocrine system, and the immune system. That's what we are trying to fix with drugs. So you can't undermine that.
Yeah. Something I'll name also, just maybe taking this conversation slightly a bit of a different direction though also is, so yes, spirituality and faith are incredible predictors of positive health outcomes, period. And I think it's really important for us to know, especially for people of faith, and I belong to the Seventh-day Adventist Church and I'm an avid practitioner. Something that is really important for us to be aware of also is that faith and religious communities also can perpetuate harm and trauma as well. And so it is so critical for us to also keep that lens in mind as well. One of the statistics that we looked at and often talked about in child abuse prevention and ACE is also child abuse often happens in church and faith communities. And I think the statistic was 66 or 67% of all cases of child abuse outside of the home took place in communities where the kid knew someone, where there was a consistent relationship. And so churches and schools and youth centers are three of the most common areas where child abuse often happens. And so that should also be a call to action to us to just be aware of and to be sensitive to that. And therapy, is something that I'm a huge proponent of. And as we're talking about recreation and outdoor recreation today, I want to make sure that we also highlight, the importance, the really central importance of therapy in moving past trauma.
I know we spent a lot of time on that question, so I'm going to wrap this one up just by saying that even though traumatic things have happened maybe to you in church, doesn't mean that we want you to stop coming. We don't have that same attitude about school. Something happens bad at school, we just keep going back. So just maybe have that same attitude about church. All right, Dr. Boja, there's a question about diabetes, and I'm sure all of you maybe can answer as well. What advice can you give an insulin-dependent diabetic whose body is killing its natural insulin made by the body to reduce medication use?
Well, I think that's one of the, on the surface it looks like a hard question, but that's an obvious question for many. If I read it correctly, I think they're referring to the type 1, or somehow, you can actually have something called type 1.5, might sound strange, or LADA, latent onset, adult onset type 1 type. In other words, I think the question that they're asking is, my body is destroying my own insulin, and I am on insulin. Can I do anything about it, right? Yes, the answer is yes. Just because you ended up on insulin, whether you're as an adult or a child or a type 1, for whatever reason, you can. Because just because you ended up on insulin, that's not the end of it. I have patients. We are blessed with a lot of patients now. We're getting type 1s. They joined our program with 150 or 200 units of insulin per day. And I recently heard one of the endocrinologists, actually, the diabetic specialist, he said, like, if you give that much insulin to a cow, that would die. And he said one of the reasons why he switched to lifestyle medicine was when I read that, I think I was shocked, because that's what I do to my patients. How come humans are not dying? So we have other forces to kind of balance it out, but the point is, just because you end up on insulin is not the end, because what if instead of taking 150 units of insulin, you can manage with just 20, 30 units of insulin? Because insulin is a growth hormone. It actually makes you gain weight, more fat. And then excess insulin causes a lot of other health problems, and going to the heart disease as well. There are many ways that you can actually mitigate, and because there is a second invisible enemy underlying, which is actually a type 2 element. Type 1 diabetic can actually turn into double diabetes, meaning eventually, just like anybody else, you can build insulin resistance and you become 2-in-1. You have type 1 to start with, and then you have insulin resistance, adding on to that to become type 2. So your insulin need would go high. So by changing the lifestyle, your diet, your life, your exercise, your sleep, your stress management, under professional supervision, you can actually reduce the insulin resistance, reduce the need for insulin, and there's a whole lot that you can actually improve.
Yeah, just to add on to that, so there's type 1, like you mentioned, type 2, which is the biggest part of diabetes now. Then 1.5 is the burned out type 2s, where you just trashed your pancreas by your lifestyle and you just can't make any insulin anymore. The reason that lifestyle is so important and why insulin is so bad for you, basically you have a big sugar load, huge sugar spike. Your body pumps out a bunch of insulin to get the sugar into the cells, and then insulin is a growth factor. It's going to make you gain weight. If you've seen if yourself is a type 2 diabetic, or your family or friends are type 2 diabetics, as they have increasing insulin resistance, increasing dose of insulin, they gain weight. That starts a cycle where they need more insulin, more weight gain, more insulin, more weight gain, and goes out of control. When I was a med student, people on 30 units of insulin were like, wow, now type 2s, 100, 120 units, we see that all the time. So by cutting back your sugar load or doing things like intermittent fasting, where you have less spikes of eating, those are ways to try to decrease that pattern. So just something to think about.
And that's why we're like talking about just doing their exercises and other things, because those are the things that are actually going to increase the cellular sensitivity to the insulin. Like Dr. Boja mentioned yesterday, you just want the doorway to open, and data upon data we've shown that how the exercises actually helps to open the doors so that these things will come into the cells. The cells actually do that. So for instance, sometimes I tell some of my patients that they do what we call the digestive walk. So mostly after every meal, they take a 10-minute walk, because that way the cells get hungry, all the food, by the time the digestion is over, and then it converts into simple sugars, the cells are ready to actually absorb them. So sometimes I've told people, and then they've had incredible results just by doing what we call the digestive walk, where they actually, every meal, they just take a 10-minute walk, and that actually even help them to even settle down.
Dan, I'm glad you're ending with that, because I'm only with this last question. Well, there are other questions we didn't get to, but is there an exercise routine that would help with what you were talking about earlier, balance, flex, strength, aerobic, and the balance? Is there an exercise routine, maybe a simple one? Maybe they don't want to go and do like the whole 2-hour routine at the gym. Is there something that maybe you could do at the house, or a simple one if they do have a gym or something like that? Is there something that you would suggest?
I think that the most practical way is that tomorrow they should come for the breakout session. So yes, and then the 5K, you just come tomorrow, we have a breakout session, and we're going to do practical demonstrations of it. But even for that, simple things like brushing your teeth and trying to stand on a single leg in the morning. By the time you're done, how long does it take for you to brush your teeth? 2 minutes, right? So within 2 minutes, try to stand on one leg and try to balance off. If you don't have that, sometimes when you're doing something, I always tell people just on a single leg, just use one finger on the wall just to try to strike a balance. And after you get better, you take the finger off. Those are some of the things that actually you can actually work to get on the balance. Sometimes I also tell people just to do something like a simple obstacle course. And we can just demonstrate that where we have, like, you can have a stack of books, like in a 4 square, like a cross, and then you step forward, you step sideways, you step backward, and then you're gonna see that for most people, if I should demonstrate, you see that when they step forward like this, they are okay. But when they have to step sideways and then they step back, you realize that they have a challenge. So if you have a stack of books in 4, the goal is that you should be able to do the whole square, forward, side, back, and back to this way in less than 15 seconds. That's the standardized test. So if you can do it within 15 seconds, you have, the data shows that you have a much, like about 99% less fall risk. But for those who have to take more than 15 seconds to make that 4 square to come back, they always have a higher susceptibility of falling, especially. And for instance, if it takes you, like if I lose my balance and I have to take 1, 2, or more 3 steps before I can regain my balance, you have a 90% chance of falling. So if you want to train that, you can actually use that as a simple way. You can just have 4 books or anything that you can have and then put it like a cross, and then you step in that manner. You can do clockwise and counterclockwise, and your goal is that you should be able to get to do that in less than 15 seconds. That's another simple way of training your balance.
Thank you so very much, doctors. And just want to point out again, like Dr. Ben says, we do have breakout sessions tomorrow, so please come tomorrow. Then before that, there is a 5K that's not going to be here. It's going to be right down the street at a local park. So if you need directions, just ask, and we will tell you how to do that. Thank you, gentlemen, for the answers and the deep conversation. We're going to take another break right now because we want to get you up, moving, not sitting too much. We'll make it about 5 minutes. 5 minutes, we'll come back, and we'll have our next session.
Thank you.
All right, as we wait for the next speaker, have some quick information wanted to share. Have Brianna here.
Happy Sabbath, church. Okay, I'm going to try again. Happy Sabbath, church. There we go. We're so happy to have all of you here with us this Sabbath afternoon. I wanted to thank everyone for coming as well, setting apart time and focusing, investing in your health and challenging yourself, stepping out of your comfort zone. It's amazing. I wanted to let you know that we will be doing giveaways this afternoon after lunch. And you can enter to win a prize by following or liking our Facebook page, which is this QR code right here. So if you don't have us on Facebook, go ahead and give that QR code, open up your camera app, scan that really quick, and keep a lookout for a post that we will be putting out by lunchtime. And we will post an interactive post about our breakout sessions earlier today, and you enter to win a prize by commenting on that post. So Facebook has a setting where the comment on a post is picked by random. So this means that the media team will not be choosing. There's no favoritism. It's going to be all Facebook choosing for you guys. And we will give those prizes out this afternoon between the afternoon breakout sessions. Thank you.
All right, and we're going to go ahead and get right into the next speaker. We're going to have Dr. Boja come up here, and we're going to get started. We're going to have some testimonial time once again. And then, of course, in a few minutes after that, we're going to have the orchestra. So I know you guys are anxiously waiting, but we're going to have the Dr. Boja here. Again, keep putting questions in that QR code so we can have any questions answered. If they don't get answered here in the panel, we will post those answers because we want to make sure that anyone that has any questions is able to be part of that. We'll welcome here Dr. Boja.
Every day, people live with the fear of lifelong diabetes. But what if that fear could be replaced with freedom? We don't just change charts, we help people rewrite their future. David reversed life-threatening blood pressure without medications. Nikhil used science and lifestyle. Jojo found joy with less insulin. At New Me, patients become proof. Lifestyle becomes life again.
Good morning, everyone. All right. Hopefully you're having fun so far, and I know this is actually, I love the speakers, and I think that the content they bring in, it's pretty interactive, and that's the heart and soul of this conference. But it's a pleasure and a privilege to be kind of invited for this to this conference. And I'm just kind of curious, how many were you here yesterday? Oh, good, okay, good number. I think we have some new faces as well. If you recap, we had a great session yesterday, sharing a couple of patients, their journeys, and then we're going to have one more today, as I promised. Having said that, let's begin with a simple question that I was actually going to asking everybody. That think of yourself, maybe yourself or your family members. I'm just curious if anyone here in this room or in your family combating or fighting any chronic medical problem, like obesity, diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, heart disease, cancer, kidney failure, fatty liver, so forth. Good. Right. So that's not a surprise because this is where we live. 6 in 10 Americans have at least one chronic disease, that is 60%, more than half. And then 4 in 10 Americans, that is nearly half of us, have at least 2 or more chronic medical problems. It's not that we didn't have enough drugs, we didn't have enough experts or physicians or the science. We have all that, but despite, we're still in struggle. After 15 years of my practice, Actually, there's an epiphany moment in my practice. There's one day I had a patient, actually a family, who couldn't fit in any of the chairs or the furniture in our clinic. I said, like, man, okay, this is one of those, family combating, obesity. Mom, dad, and 3 kids, they're all crawling on the floor. Then I moved on to the next patient, and there was the same patient, 4th time in that month, in the wheelchair with a big soda up there, and the legs are big, doc, and my infection is back again. Well, didn't you just finish the antibiotics that I gave you? I just did, but it's back again. Well, that's a cellulitis. There was no choice but to send to the hospital because morbidly obese patient with a cellulitis or infection in the leg, 4th time in the past couple of months. And I was like, man, this is tough. And then the very next day, I had a patient, and we are almost like we operate like a mini ER. And this patient had a chest pain and all kinds of risk factors you can think of. I didn't want to take a chance because this is like a time bomb. I asked my nurses to send him to the ER because we have 3 standing by, ambulances. And it took more than an hour to transfer this patient to the ER. I was like, why? We have our own ambulances, and they should be, these patients should have been in the ER by now. And I'm kind of scared because I don't want him to get the heart attack. They said, like, doc, we called, but they left. And they had to call the 911 to get bariatric ambulance. I was like, what? I know we have bariatric chairs and bariatric beds. Now we are waiting for the bariatric ambulance. So that's what actually triggered me. And then because I was looking at myself in the mirror, I was sure enough turning myself into one of those patients, getting chubbier, my A1C was creeping up, my blood pressure going up. That's when I decided to make some little changes. And then after losing 40 pounds, I was surprised that almost all my numbers turned backwards. I was like, why can't I do it to my patients? Then I realized the challenge in a traditional practice. That's when we launched our clinic, a lifestyle medicine clinic called New Me Health. And sure enough, I can't be proud enough of our patients because they embraced the positive lifestyle change using our protocols and our monitoring systems and our coaching and everything, and they began to reverse their diseases. And we call them our New Me champions. It's a growing community of patients who are actually going against the grain. They're actually proving their physicians or specialists wrong that this disease, diabetes, obesity, blood pressure can be actually reversed, or in other words, at least toned down. And what we have done yesterday was we had I'm blessed with 3 of our patients who agreed to share their stories here on stage. So we had a privilege of having 2 of them. We had David shared his story where he was scared after being diagnosed with a cancer. And doctors were scared because his blood pressure was in 200 over 120, and he got to be on medication. He was like, what? Do I have an alternate way? So that's when he tried himself a lot of dietary changes and finally joined our program. And we are proud to share that his blood pressure runs in 120s over 80s with 0 blood pressure medication. Think about it. And we had the second champion sharing his story, Nikhil, with his diabetes. After 15, 16 years of diabetes, we were able to see his A1C coming down from 12.5 down to 5.5. Extremely uncontrolled diabetes on multiple diabetic medications to technically pre-diabetic or non-diabetic with just barely half of his pill. 90% of the medications were actually reduced. And today, we had the pleasure to invite our 3rd champion. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for our Jojo. Can we have Jojo and Mom? Jojo is one of our youngest patients in our program, and I believe this is a very pertinent discussion as somebody was posing the question about, I think I'm type 1. Take a seat, Mama. Type 1 diabetic, and can I do anything about it? I think this is a pretty relevant the case that I think we can learn from. I know it's going to be a battle. It can be a never-ending battle or the struggle, but there are ways to actually improve the situation, and then I think we can hear some from that. And I appreciate Mom and then Jojo for taking your time. It's a Saturday. I think you should be chilling out with your little ones, right? Little brother, and then despite all this busy schedule and other commitments, they actually agreed to kind of share time with us today already. Why don't we begin with a little time? Maybe you can take us back, Mom. What was her health like? What was her health or diabetes like before finding New Me Health? If you can, just paint a little picture. Was it an easy ride? Was it a shock? Was it a surprise? What was it like before finding Numi Health?
About 2 years ago, going on 3, come July, she went into the hospital because what the doctors were saying was that she was delusional. She just kept throwing up. She couldn't hold nothing down. They were like, she's dehydrated. And then I get hit with, she is in diabetic ketoacidosis. I'm like asking them, what is that? I have no idea what that means. And all they kept saying is too much acid in the blood, too much acid in the blood. Then an endocrinologist walks in and he tells me that my daughter's a type 1 diabetic. I was asking, how did this happen? How? How does it, what's the cause? What is going on? What's a type 1 diabetic? I heard of a type 2, but not a type 1. And they explained it the best they could. They gave us the insulin, and I asked the doctor, well, do I need to, be strict with her on her food? He said, no, she can have whatever she wants. Being a type 1 diabetic does not mean that she's restricted to food. She could still be a normal kid. Okay. We go home. We let her have basically everything that she wanted to have, right? They were just dose her correctly. 3 months later, boom, we're back in the hospital because of DKA. They raised the insulin to higher. A month and a half later, again, back in the hospital, DKA. And it was like that for 2 years. 2 years, nonstop, always going back and forth into the hospital. And I was trying to figure out what is happening. I changed her pediatrician because her pediatrician previously was like, oh, it's normal. Her pain right here, that's normal. She's a diabetic. Why is she having pain all the time? Why is she always going into DKA? So I started shopping around, and I found me a pediatrician. Talked to him about her DKA, and he was like, hey, you know what? Take her to TDI. Maybe you'll be able to find some help there. Took her to TDI. And then October of 2024, we're back in the hospital for DKA. At this point, I didn't know what to do. I got home, my mother-in-law told me, hey, there's this doctor that I used to work for, Dr. Karapali. I just saw on Instagram that, he has built his own practice. I think he's a diabetic doctor, don't quote me, give him a try. At this point, I was on the 50-50 defense side. Is he gonna be another doctor that's just gonna tell me she is a type 1 diabetic? Or is he gonna be a doctor that is going to help me and fix what is going on with my kid?
Right, yeah. So that was actually, because I think that's pretty scary, right? And I'm just curious, is any type 1s in the room? I mean, if you don't feel comfortable, you have to raise hand. But either type 1 or type 1, anyone on insulin, just answer yourself if you don't feel comfortable. DKA, does anyone know what DKA is? Diabetic ketoacidosis. So unfortunately, that's a household phrase for them. So she kind of comfortably just used it. Diabetic ketoacidosis. Technically speaking, that can be the worst form of diabetes, so the complex and acute issue you can think of. Technically, high sugars turning into acids and ketones and can put you in the coma. That's what she meant by delusional. She was alert and awake, but she was just, she wasn't know where she was, and I'm not sure how the sugars were. At the time of the diagnosis, what were the sugars?
My sugars were really high all the time, and we would have to be through 30 to 25 units just to bring it down to the 100s. And when I'll go into the hospital, they'll put me on the IG drip, and my numbers will go down normally. And me and my mom would just look at each other like we don't know, like, how that happened.
Well, in other words, that's not a surprise because that's the standard of care. That's what we do. That's what system is designed to do. But the challenging element was, I think, why is my going? Because back to back every few months to the hospital with this extreme form of chaos. Even though we are increasing the insulin, there got to be a different force. So I think, as you mentioned, Mom, that you found us through the family member, and what was it like, when you first walked in? Because that you scared me more than how you felt, because like as we were sharing yesterday, every single patient is a challenge because they try different things and they're finding an alternate way or a better way of dealing with that. So what was your feel like when you all walked into a clinic? Did you feel like, okay, we found the place, or was it like, what was it like?
When we first walked in, I was like, he's not gonna help me because he's like gonna tell me I'm a type 1 diabetic and I have to take this medicine and this medicine and this medicine and put me on so many pills, like the other doctors try to put me on pills. And then after the first month, I was like, okay, maybe he can help me.
All right. Anything to add to that, Mom?
When I first walked in, it was very calming. Your office is very, very calming. And I was just hoping that, you can give me some encouragement to not give up, because that's where I was at. I was very close on giving up, because it's very tiring, and it takes a very strong person to be able to see their baby just lay there and not be able to do anything for them.
Sure, yeah. Well, yeah, I think that was a challenge for us too. I think I'm glad. I think you followed us, you trusted, because this is still an ongoing battle and the struggle. But down the road, I think we are a couple of months down the road. I don't know. I mean, I think by this time, how many more DKs were you expecting? So you're supposed to, based on the frequency, I think you could be in twice or a couple of times already in the hospital. So how was this little time that we had in the few months? Did we see any hope, or did you start seeing any improvement in your sugars? How do you feel, Jojo? Or maybe you can think of the sugars. How are the numbers in the past, and then how are they now? I mean, it still can be up and down, but what's your overall feel?
In the past, they were just high every week, every month, every year. For the 2 years, and then the 1 year that we joined you, I started seeing I'm dropping on myself. No insulin, no salads, no nothing, and no water. And then by the year or 6 months that we're trying, I see more green and red than orange and yellow.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Somebody who, if you have no idea what those references for, that's on continuous glucose monitoring. So obviously, type 1s, almost every patient is on glucose monitoring in a clinic. When you say high, it's always going to be high, 400, 500. You can't even see on the meter. That's what the right was. And as the numbers getting into the green zone, I think that's where the hope began. Alrighty, and then what do you see now? I think I don't know if you can think of in terms of A1Cs before, or it's still a battle. But what are the days? How days are different when you look at the meters, and what kind of hope or actually possibility that you see now?
Well, from her since diagnosis, she was at 13%, with her sugars being at 1,000.
Mm-hmm.
And then, since starting your program back in November to today, we have noticed a huge difference. Her A1C, last I knew, was that she was at a 9.8, which is a huge difference. Being from just her meter reading high and seeing numbers now, We don't just see high anymore. We see numbers. I think the lowest that we saw was 105 at in the morning. Before it was just high. She always stayed
Need
high.
more than 400.
Yeah.
You just open your eyes in the morning and then it's already kind of high. All right, it sounds good. That, yeah, 13 A1C down below as low as we saw, 8.8, but was it with more insulin or how was your pump? Because, unfortunately, you, how was your pump running out before and then now?
When I first started the pump, I would go through one pump a day. And I got tired of changing it every day, so I would dose myself less and less, but I would go high more. And then when we started your program, I would dose myself for 58 grams of carbs, and it would give me, with my numbers, and it would give me like 3.78 units, and it would go 3 days with the pump.
Right, so in other words, hundreds of units of the pump would just drain 24 hours. And still the sugars were off the chart. And then I think that's the confidence we had. I think we feel pleased that I think you're being helped as well. And now the pump lasts for days and days while the sugars are actually better. So and that's exactly what we want. I think this is not about talking one situation or one patient that what the program can do. But I think my point is there's a way. You just need to kind of sit down and have a better way of understanding the disease, how the body responds to the diet. And I always say, did we see 100% change in everything? No. I mean, I always said this is the cutest, my sweetheart, the youngest patients in our program, and she's in a growing age, so we don't need to kind of stress on every dimension. The little 10-degree shift or improvement we made, this is the result we're seeing. And then I think I'm hoping that she's going to learn more and more about her own body and how, because the diet today, technically 90% of the food in the market is not set for human consumption, let alone kids. This is not even a conspiracy, not even a confusion. Our own invention and innovation, modernization of the food industry actually gave birth to all these, the troubles. So if we can go back to that, and it's going to be a journey to kind of get back to as much as possible. But any message out there, Mom or Jojo, for anybody who in the situation, if somebody was looking for, is there a hope for me? Can I, get better? What do you all want to say?
Go ahead and, give Dr. K a call. Honestly and truthfully. He was able to help me and JoJo to not have to worry about going back into the hospital, getting her insulin risen and changing her insulin, all of that has stopped. Honestly and truthfully, because another thing that Dr. K forgot to mention was that at the beginning, he showed us the numbers on her blood work, and she was also high cholesterol and fatty liver, along with being a type 1 diabetic. He helped her. He honestly and truthfully did help her to reverse, and along with the type 2, because she was a double whammy on top of that. He helped reverse the type 2. He helped reverse the cholesterol and the fatty liver. He honestly, with no medications.
Well, technically, that might actually sound like astounding change, but that's how the human body works. If you put in harmony, magically, all the instruments begin to play. All you need is a conductor. You have tons of instruments and the players. If you don't have a conductor and if there's no script, none of the instruments would actually play. You don't call them instruments. It's a chaos. That's exactly how the body. We just need to go back to that, basic. And I want to close, without taking much of your time. I want to close with one of these, my favorite quotes, and I think I was sharing yesterday. It's up on the screen. Even though we're talking about the exercise and recovery, and then I'm proud that I think she's proud. She goes to martial arts. I think Muay Thai, right? I was kind of scared. I send my kids to Taekwondo, but there's a lot of work in Muay Thai, so martial arts. So that's her strength training, and then there's so many things what we do. But when we go back to the diet, because the food can you cannot undermine, forget about the value and the power of the food. Here we go. One of my favorite, Ayurvedic proverbs: when diet is wrong, medicine is of no use. As we heard yesterday, when the diet is wrong, medicine is of no use. But when the diet is correct, medicine is of no need. In other words, if you fix your diet and then goes beyond that lifestyle, you probably don't need a medication. But if you mess up your lifestyle, especially diet, which is, we are surrounded by these, toxic, the food around, if you neglect it, it doesn't matter how many medications you're using, I think it's going to be fine. And I just want to close the conversation by saying, always remember, your lifestyle is the best medicine. If you don't address those elements, eat, move, sleep, and stress management, and so forth, you can't find the solution elsewhere, and then always choose health over everything else. I know we want everything, any possession, assets or education or anything, finance matter, but without health, we know that soul won't be happy. And always make it as your priority, and then always try to add more life to years than just years to life. So quality of life matters more than anything else. As I said yesterday, no one knows how long you're going to be on this planet, but as long as we are alive, we want to be functional, productive, and self-sufficient. And we are proud that we actually have teenagers and preteens all the way to 80s patients. They still want to make a difference. And then all I want to say is, it's never too late to change your lifestyle. It's never too early. So you can always have a better day. And I just want to close right there. And thank you very much. And thank you, Mom and then Jojo, for sharing your time. I hope that was helpful.
We do have the orchestra that's going to help us out with our break time. But I'll share, Dr. Boja, I'll never forget my first diabetic patient. The number was 900 and something, and I went to go talk to them. And according to the book, he was not supposed to be really doing much. But in San Antonio, they're talking to you. Those patients are like if nothing. Never forget that patient. We have the orchestra, and again, take this time if you need to take a quick break.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Vitaly Perlinsky, and I'm the pastor here at St. Nikhil's Seventh-day Adventist Church. I'd like to welcome all of you, and I'm grateful to have opportunity to spend this time together. Like many speakers, I have two problems that I have to deal with. First problem is I have hours amount of information that I have to squeeze into minutes. And secondly, we have such a diverse audience from different traditions, backgrounds, knowledge levels, and it's up to me to try to speak to all of you, to raise everybody to get to the same level. So let's pray. Let's pray that I meet this challenge and that the time that I spend with you is actually beneficial to all of us. Our God, our Savior, and our Creator, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity that we have to be here together, to learn wonderful information, to spend time meeting and socializing. We thank you for beautiful testimonies of transformation that have been wrought in people's lives where they see results, they're blessed, and they're sharing with all of us for opportunity to grow. So I pray again, Lord, that we would learn ourselves and that in all that we do, we bring you honor and glory. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. I know you're ready to eat, so I'll talk fast or short so that we all can continue with our day. My responsibility is to talk about an overlooked but an important subject of intersection of physical, mental, and spiritual within ourselves. From the dawn of humanity, spirituality was always part of all cultures and important part of lives of individuals. Today we find that our society, our culture is trying to find a different twist. By the way, I asked my young friends to help me. Guys, what we'll do is, instead of giving it out, I have a little handout. We'll put it at the end and people can pick it up if they're leaving, because there are some references and there is some further study material. So I appreciate you all. Thank you for being willing to help. But what we find is our society, often spirituality is seen as something outside of regular life. But it's always been with us. There is no culture, there is no civilization, whether it is some remote island somewhere or major civilization that did not have spirituality as its core, as its function, as its part. Interestingly enough, even when there were societal structures that tried to remove known spirituality, guess what they did? They had to reinvent it. In France, when Catholicism was being pushed away, Robespierre and his fellows realized we need something. So instead of regular religion, they created a cult of reason. A goddess of reason was set in Notre Dame. And here is Our Lady of Strasbourg Cathedral, where many of the paintings come in, where again, there was a worship of reason because something had to have a spiritual connotation. I come from a culture where communism was at the center of beliefs. But guess what? Very soon, communists realized that pushing away all religion is not good enough. Now, most of you don't read Russian. What you have there is you have the same slogan that appears. And we had it from childhood. We had to repeat, Lenin жил, Lenin жив, Lenin будет жить. Which means Lenin lived, Lenin lives, Lenin will keep on living. Because they understood that there is a need within the society for something bigger, for something transcendent. Now, the reason I'm sharing with you is not because I believe you're an atheist. You're here in church listening to health presentation. So it seems like we're speaking to the choir, right? But here's a principle. Just like people in the materialistic world twist, reinvent, or reinterpret reality to fit their worldview, in the same way, many of us who believe also take what our sacred writings say and we twist, manipulate, or reinvent them to fit our worldview as well. Now, but today, belief is not just a matter of something ancient. But today there are studies that demonstrate the viability of spirituality. I want to share with you two statements from National Library of Medicine. It's the National Center for Biotechnology Institute. And this is a conclusion from a study called Ability to Gain Control Over One's Own Brain Activity and Its Relationship to Spiritual Practice, a multimodal imaging study, where they use functional MRI scans to look at people and their behavior. Here's the conclusion. Individuals with a high frequency of prayer, who are assumed to be experts in focusing attention on inner states and self-referential processes, showed an increased ability to gain control over their own brain activity during NF as compared to individuals with low frequency of prayer. Analysis of brain volumetry revealed that plastic changes in brain due to spiritual exercise favor control over one's own brain activity. Importantly, brains of both groups did not differ in volume size. Hence, plastic changes in brain based on the frequency of spiritual practices were not related to systematic growth or shrinkage of specific brain regions. Now, we have to understand that you cannot use science to prove God the same way we prove wave functions of light or existence of electrons. But there are studies that demonstrate influences. For example, even in science, there is no proof of dark matter existence. But by seeing how light travels through space and how it's influenced by different things, we can predict that it is the gravity of dark matter that causes light to function. So in the same way, spirituality can be demonstrated not as a hydrogen collider, but as its effect on human beings. Here's another study, the study more from a sociological perspective. Religious spiritual beliefs and practices are commonly used by both medical and psychiatric patients to cope with illness and other stressful life changes. A large volume of research shows that people who are more religious and spiritual have better mental health and adapt more quickly to health problems compared to those who are less religious or spiritual. These possible benefits to mental health and well-being have psychological consequences that impact physical health, affect the risk of disease, and influence response to treatment. So, we need to understand that our physical, our mental, emotional, and our spiritual natures are making us whole. They are necessary. Dr. Boja earlier today pointed out the correlations between those of us. And as I said, we need to ask ourselves, as believers, as people who accept spirituality, do we sometimes manipulate what we know to fit our own views? Within Christianity, very often we find people create a distinction before Jesus and after Jesus. What I believe, how did Jesus show it, and whether I can put it away. But truly, in a spiritual world, the difference should be before sin or after sin, before fall or after fall. You see, we understand that the world that we live in is not the world that God created, that it needs to be better, it ought to be better. And importance for us as Christians is that Jesus came to restore us to the world. Interestingly enough, most of the times when Jesus was asked crucial questions, he didn't go to the law, he went to the story of creation to show what the world should have been like and what he desires for us to go back to. So, as we particularly talk about the importance of exercise and rest and restoration, the story of creation gives us a unique perspective and a significant perspective. In the book of Genesis chapter 2, we read, "By the seventh day God had finished the work he had been doing, so on the seventh day he rested from all his work." Rest is not something that we need to do because we are too old, too tired, or don't exercise. Rest was something that was put into our life and our existence even before the fall. Now, what is beautiful here is that not only that it describes who God was, but it describes more of our reality. So, Genesis chapter 1, the story of creation, days 1 through 6, God creates. Day 7, God rests. Is at the end of the story. No, there's more to it. You see, the last day of creation for God was what? Was the first day of your and our existence. So there's a beautiful thematic connection between significance of rest for humanity and the relationship with God. And the connection is this. It shows that humanity's foundation is not performance, but presence. Before doing anything, we are called to be with God. So here it is. And by the way, for those of you who attend my church, who believe in the significance of Sabbath, where is Sabbath in your line of life? Is it the end or is it the beginning? Because that's a real challenge. Too often for us, Sabbath is the, I can relax and do nothing. Where in the creation story, it was day one. It is the day, it is the experience that precipitates your success as time to come. And by the way, this is not just a thematic, this is actually textual perspective. Look at this, Genesis 1, all the way through Genesis 2 and 3, is a story of general creation. Then we have Genesis 2, verses 1 through 3, sabbatical description, as I said. But notice, what happens then in Genesis 2? Right after the Bible finishes telling us about the Sabbath, it actually goes and it restates the story of creation, just told us in general, but it restates it in a specific detail in chapter 2, verse 4. This is how the Lord God created the heaven and the earth and everything is in them. And there, again, in the context of Sabbath, now we're told God didn't just made man, but he got his hands dirty, that God formed man. And after that, he tells us that man now was made for a purpose. And then we learn that, oh, man was lonely and there was no partner found in him. So he spent time looking among the creatures. And then how God created a woman, all in the context of Sabbath. You and my existence is being in the presence of God, understanding that rest is what we start with. Rest is not what we end. Interesting enough, throughout time, people have tried to change the pattern. Last night, Dr. Hahn referred to the fact that really we have a lot of explanation for our calendar. Right? Our annual calendar follows the trip of the Earth around the sun. Our 24-hour day explains by the fact that the Earth turns around in itself, and the lunar calendar also explains what's happening. But how can we explain the 7-day pattern? We can't. There is no astronomical, there is no geological, and there is no other way of explaining except that this is how God designed our world. Now, back at the time of French Revolution, they tried to change it. They introduced a 10-hour day. That's the calendar, decade, and that's actually a pocket watch where you can see that the 10 days of the week were inscribed in the watch. But guess what? Within a short period of time, they realized that society was not functioning. That there were physiological, there were interpersonal problems, there were emotional issues that people were dealing with, and our good French people reverted back to the 7-week cycle. Now, I want to go back to my people again. In 1929, Soviet Union adopted the Gregorian calendar, and they also tried to institute 5-day week. When that didn't work, after a couple of decades, they instituted 6-day week. Again, they saw breaking down of family structure. They saw challenges in production. And by 1940, the Soviet Union went back to 7-day week, again, because they realized the need for the way they used to be. Interestingly enough, agriculture remained on 7-day cycle, even though factories were forced on a 5-day 6. I don't know why, but they could live in there and doing that. So now, by the way, also you're saying, well, Pastor, you're speaking about things that happened a long time ago. Aren't there new atheists who are describing and challenging spirituality? But here's a problem. I refer to people who not only believed but tried to put something in practice. None of the new atheists want to go live in truly atheistic countries. They love to live here. And it is impossible to validate what they're saying because it was never implemented. But both French and Soviets tried to implement what they believed, and they've discovered it just does not work. So we can only use something, not just theoretical, but something practical to demonstrate its validity and application. But at the end, I want to, because we're Christian, I want to draw a lesson from the life of Jesus. Now, we can talk about the fact that Jesus grew up in a culture that honored Sabbath. There are passages that talk about him customary going to church. But I particularly want to draw you into a perspective of the season that we lived in. We just finished celebrating Passover, Easter. And there is something very interesting about the biblical description of Jesus' last Passover. First of all, I want to show you kind of a breakdown of how much time the scripture spends on the life of Jesus. So the first 30 years of Christ's life only have 4 chapters dedicated to it, right? 2 chapters in Matthew and 2 chapters in Luke. Matthew and John don't even talk about his birth or anything that happened to him. Then Christ's ministry, which is about three and a half years, there's a certain number of chapters that are dedicated to them in all of the Gospels. But what you will see is that by volume, the greatest amount of space in the Scripture is dedicated to the last week of Jesus' life. So in Matthew, Mark, Mark, and Luke, about a third of the Gospel is spent just in 1 week, and in John, about a quarter. So what it tells us is that last week was significant. And it was because this is the time when Jesus was actually beginning to talk openly about who he was. Remember, before that he would say, hey, don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody I healed you. Don't tell anybody that what I've done, because he didn't want to expert at the time. But once he was entering Jerusalem, he was speaking openly about his death. He was challenging openly the failing religion of Judaism and spirituality. So the last week of Jesus' life was the most significant, and most time was spent. But it's interesting. I went online and I tried to find the description of each day of Jesus' life. So I Googled, and there are so many Passion Week calendars that you can find. There's something really interesting about all of them. I even went to ChatGPT and I said, events of Passion Week day by day. And same thing, in every one of them you'll find that there is no description of what he did on Saturdays. We have Palm Sunday. Immediately, we go to Monday through Thursday when he's teaching, preaching, doing everything else. Then, of course, Thursday evening is the Last Supper, Gethsemane, arrest, Friday, trial, he dies. Then we know that he is dead over Saturday, and he's resurrected on Sunday. Now, the last Saturday is easy to understand. He didn't do anything because he was dead. But notice, there is no description of him doing anything the week before. At the time when Jesus spent the most time preaching, teaching, healing, confronting, when it came to Sabbath, what did he do? Rested. And the final week, filled with tension, teaching, and ultimate sacrifice, Jesus still took time to go off. And interestingly, it's the Sabbath before that he spent in rest. Active rest, not because he had to, because he was dead. Again, pointing to the creational pattern that our life as humanity began with presence with God. It began with that special rest. And then the purpose for which we were created, we lived out afterwards. Spirituality has and needs to be and will always be an essential part of our well-being. And the beautiful part is that the sacred writings that we have, the scripture, does point to us how God cares about our physical as well as mental and spiritual well-being. And it's beautiful how even before our earth found itself in need of saving, that even then, even before, God already put specific institutions to help us to live a functional life. A life where the time of activity is prescribed and invited, but the time of rest is always and also given and present to us. Consider how you allow your writings, your sacred writings, to impact your worldview, or whether it is you who are using your worldview to reinterpret, reinvent, or manipulate what you've read. And at the end, I just want to give a couple of practical pointers on how the Bible teaches us about rest and how we can enter it. First of all, plan your rest, plan your Sabbath. Interestingly enough, God in the commandment that addresses the Sabbath tells us, remember, don't let it surprise you. By the way, since I still do have 4 minutes, as I'm not going to, I want to tell you as well. So the significance of Sabbath commandment should not be overstated or should not be overlooked as well. Because God deemed it important to put it alongside with things like murder, theft, or infidelity. Because again, Sabbath takes its beginning before sin, before fall, before we were breaking down. But not only does it point us before, but also within the same commandment. And consider that times when we're written within the same commandment, it brought in principles that are incredible. Remember, it begins by saying, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy, and so and so. And then it says, who and how is supposed to keep it? Neither you nor your son nor your daughter. Which means that thousands of years ago, Sabbath commandment allows us to bridge the generational gaps. Neither son nor your daughter, it bridges gender gaps. Neither nor your male servant nor your female servant. The Sabbath bridges social gaps. Even at the end, he says, not even the cattle that is within you. You see, back at that time, Sabbath was solving so many of the societal issues that we grapple or deal with if we only understood where it came from. So, key is plan your Sabbath. Anything good in life had to be planned. Your education, your trips. The orchestra had to plan on what to do. Nobody has ever said, my best vacation was when we didn't know where we were going, we didn't know what to do, and we didn't know what we were going to do there. No, you always have to look at something. So in the same way, we are invited to look into it. Number 2, disconnect. Notice the Bible is not very specific. It doesn't tell you to the minute detail. It's later on where people said, okay, now we have to kind of break it down and to apply it to every occupation. So if you are a tailor, you can use this needle but not this needle. If you're a businessman, you can walk so far but not so far. If you're doing this, you can carry this and so. But this is not the biblical. What the Bible says is that no, stop laboring, stop doing something what you do. And I believe for us it will be disconnect. Find a way to look at your life and reprioritize it in a way where you are not being forced or driven by something outside of yourself. Spend time in worship. I invite you to come to my church, but there are plenty of other beautiful, beautiful people of faith who come together throughout town. Begin there. Begin understanding that you are not alone and that the time that God wants to spend with you. Engage in nature. I believe that Jesus had 2 books. One was the Bible, one was nature, through which he was learning, and to which, in most of his parables or ministries, he referred to as bringing illustration to you and I. Reflect. This is not just a time to spend wandering, but this is a time of a conversation and introspection. Say no to business and make it communal. Make it a place where it is not just you, but a connection beyond you. Because, again, even in the context of creation, we discover that God is communal himself. Let us make a man in our image. At the end, my dear friends, not only do I'm grateful for opportunity for you and I to be here today, to be challenged, to be excited, to be introduced to new information, but today I invite you and I to make that small step. Small step in choosing small actions, small steps in choosing changing our diet, but also small steps in growing spiritually. In living the kind of life that God designed before sin and brokenness came into it, the life that we believe we're looking forward to from now in eternity. May God bless you, and thank you for your attention.
We are going to lunch. I'm just going to give quick instructions. As I hope everyone's staying. As you exit, you're going to take a right. There's a door right outside of the church. That's going to be the entrance to get your food. All you're going to do is walk the hallway, get your tray, and then you go in to go eat instead of creating a little bit of a rush right here down the middle. So I hope everyone is staying for lunch. As you exit, you're going to take a right. There's a door. As you come out, you'll see a sign. It's right there. You go in the door, and the hallway is what makes the line in to pick up the food. And it's already ready for you. So again, I hope you stay. The other part of health is interacting with people. I am an introvert by nature. You guys might not think that's true. I am an introvert by nature. When I talk to people, I feel better, even though I hate to admit it, because I am an introvert by nature. You could tell my wife. Anytime there's more than 5 people, I ask my sister, who's going to your house? Oh, okay, maybe I won't go. Again, talk to people. That's how you get to know each other. That's probably the best time to just have conversations. Again, as you exit, take a right, go in through the door, and you'll make a hallway. And I'll pray real quick as we exit. Father God, thank you so much for being so good to us. But most importantly, thank you so much for allowing us to just use our talents in different ways. We get stuck in the talents that are available from you are to do this, to do that, but there are many talents, from health, from just going outside. Many people have talents, and that's the information we've been getting here today. And as we continue this Sabbath rest that you have blessed us with, and we go into the time for lunch, that we have more blessings as we talk with each other. And again, it's always to glorify your name. So as we leave this place, we not only leave with more information, but we have a way to make a change so those that come in contact with us know that you are real because of our life. Because that is the biggest gospel that we give. We're taking that our life as our gospel. So God, continue to be with the group here, continue to be with the speakers, and of course with the food, the blessing to those that prepared it, and in our conversations. In Jesus' name, amen.